Harvard University is losing access to $2.2 billion in grants and $60 million in contracts at the federal level. The Trump administration's Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism announced the freeze of Harvard's funds after its heads refused to implement policies that would get rid of diversity programs, make reforms to admissions and hiring that would prioritize merit over race or gender-based preferences, and also put in some restrictions on student protests regarded as anti-Semitic. On Harvard's side, they argue this is about protecting constitutional rights. On the Trump side, they say this is about upholding civil rights laws. There was a lot of back and forth between the Trump administration and Harvard over this issue, and now Harvard has found itself at the center of a constitutional debate. This whole issue raises the real question of whether government money comes with strings attached. There are different constitutional requirements, remember, for government entities versus private entities. For the most part, private entities can censor. They can have their own standards on free speech. There are some limits to it when it comes to discrimination and civil rights, but also within some boundaries. But if you're a government institution, you have much stricter requirements on upholding constitutional rights. Government entities, they need to abide by strict standards on freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and on civil rights laws, among other requirements. They have a lot less leeway on that front. So the question with Harvard gets to something more fundamental. If a private organization receives government money, do they then also need to abide by the same strict requirements that a government agency would have to abide by? The Trump administration is effectively saying that if you get government money, you need to ensure you're in compliance with similar requirements to what a government agency would be held to. And it's not just Harvard. We saw something similar with the Trump administration cutting hundreds of millions of dollars in research funding to universities in Australia because the Australian universities were not following U.S. standards against DEI policies. The Trump administration is doing similar things on the business front. And so their approach is that if a business, if a nonprofit, if a university gets government money, they have to follow these standards. No DEI, no ESG, and no other things like censorship or violating people's civil rights.